How we doing, everyone? My name is Will Holdren. I'm the host of the Willpower Podcast. Today, we have an absolute powerhouse of an entrepreneur that mainly focuses in the real estate industry. But not only that, he's a multi-business owner that stretches his businesses all the way into gyms, more specifically boxing gyms, which is amazing. On top of that, he's one of the top real estate agents in the country, and he currently is with a brokerage called LPT, which is an exploding new brokerage, which we'll jump into today and help you guys kind of understand what that is all about. Currently, like I mentioned, he's got hundreds of agents on his team, and that's growing each and every day. So it's an absolute honor to have him on here today. So, first and foremost, David Lewis, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, what's up, man? What's up, everybody? I appreciate you having me. I appreciate the intro. All of that is true. It's real estate has been a catalyst for a lot of things in my life. So I'm always excited to talk some shop and talk about, where the industry is heading and, all those things, man, because it's a thing that changed my family and my family's future, about a decade ago. So it's a huge passion for me.
It's a growing industry, and a lot of people listening to this podcast are realtors, investors, and they're in that realm. So, I'm sure your expertise today will go a long way for them, especially talking about LPT brokerage because not many people know about it yet. But you guys are the fastest growing brokerage of all time, which is pretty impressive considering the brokerages that are out there like EXP, Keller Williams, doesn't matter. LPT is by far the fastest growing. So we'll jump into that a little bit later. But starting out, I want to jump into your story specifically. So, were you always an entrepreneur growing up, or how did you end up getting into the real estate space?
Yeah, so I grew up in an entrepreneurial family where my dad and my mom had taken a basically a one truck operation for in the HVAC, so heating and air conditioning space, and built it to a multi-state operation that they eventually sold. And then they got into home building before the crash, and then they got caught like everyone else did with a lot of inventory and stuff when the market had shifted in 2008, 2009. So I had a unique perspective growing up where my parents were self-made. They were also very successful. I get to understand what hard work really means, but I also got a really good lesson in 2008, 2009 that, man, like you got to keep hitting home runs because one home run isn't always enough. You can build something really big, have a big windfall, but then you can watch it all go away. So that
Yeah.
kind of set this tone in my mind of, it's everyone's unlucky. No one's coming to save you. You got to keep going, keep going, keep going, which was kind of the beginning of me and real estate and all my entrepreneurial endeavors.
Yeah, I love that. It's really is a grind. Like you're talking about, it's how do I make it to the next day? Because, like you mentioned, 2008, it was unprecedented. People didn't expect it. And then, boom, just like that, everything you worked for could just kind of disappear in one night. And you got to figure out how to rebound. And it's interesting to
Yep.
me because you went to 2008, you saw your parents go through that. And then afterwards, you're like, you know what? I want to go into real estate. So how did that
Yeah.
transition take place for you?
Well, it wasn't like immediate. I went to the University of Alabama, and I was able to, I was a finance major, econ minor, and I was able to get my license because I had a concentration in real estate.
Yeah.
So honestly, they said, "Hey, does anyone want the real estate license?" And I crammed for a day when I took the test. I get to bypass the course, and I just had my real estate license. Initially, like the overarching goal was to go into commercial real estate because I think when you're in college and when you're thinking of like all the developments and things like that's kind of the quote unquote sexier side of real estate, it felt like was the commercial big deals, like all of these things. But I graduated in 2008, 2009, and the market had completely turned. And as I was, pursuing an opportunity in commercial real estate, there weren't any. Most of them had shut their doors down or were on hiring freezes or were running extremely bare bones. Or on the flip side, me as a recent graduate was now competing with people with 20 and 30 years of experience who had been laid off, who were also willing to make the, $35,000 a year that entry level got you at the time. So
Right.
it was a struggle. So for the next several years, I did everything from selling cable door to door to building sets for TV shows and movies to managing restaurants to waiting tables to I was the executive assistant for a real estate agent. I did it all, some of those two or three jobs at a time until 2014, where I had bought in a house or I had purchased a home previously and I went to sell it to move and it sold like for $5,000 more than I had asked for in a day. And I was like, this is crazy. So maybe there might be something as a side hustle to this residential real estate thing, which I'd always kind of stayed away from because I thought it was cheesy. I thought you were the guy on the shopping cart, right? Like I thought that's what residential realtors were.
Right.
And I realized really quickly, no, residential real estate and the opportunities that come with it can lead to really big checks. And for a guy that was working in a cubicle at that time selling roofing in Chicago from Atlanta, making $40,000 a year pre-tax, the first time I got a big check, I was like, I want more of these things. And then I was off to the races, man. The first couple of years, I was just on a path to collect as many big checks as I could. And I
Yeah.
think I left in April of, I went into real estate. I started in real estate January of 2014. And I said, hey, by April, I want to make sure I've got enough business to be able to walk away from my full-time job and still be able to support my family. I made it till about March and I had had enough business up and running that I was able to walk away. And that
Yeah.
first year, I think I sold 31 homes. Next year was like 55 and then so on and so forth up until like that, till we've consistently sold 200 to 300 homes a year for the past, I don't know, 8 years.
Yeah. It really is remarkable. And there's, like you mentioned, there's a lot of money in the real estate game. And I know a lot of people talk about how many agents there are out there. And to me, it's like that does not matter. Like, you got to have that abundance mindset and just know there's plenty of opportunity for you to jump in, find those opportunities and kind of capitalize on them. And you know what's interesting? A lot of the entrepreneurs I interview, they're into real estate like one way or another. So I always tell people if you're going to be growing a business, why not be real estate, right? You already get the great tax advantages of doing real estate. When you're selling it, you can get a nice commission check on top of it. So there's just so many benefits to kind of jumping into it and taking that lead. But for those that do jump into it, most of them don't go out and sell 31 homes in their first year. So it's kind of it's interesting how your success kind of sprouted in real estate. And like you mentioned, you guys grew to selling 300 a year pretty consistently. And on top of that, you were able to grow these massive teams, these different organizations that you were in. So on that note, I mean, what has been some of the biggest tips or takeaways that you would tell newer agents to kind of get out there, scale their business quickly, and also just to grow a massive team?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a couple of things. Is to be a team, you have to visualize. Like they always say, like the people that become millionaires, if it's not out of like some sort of windfall, like you become a millionaire years before you became a millionaire when you adopted the habits and the ways that millionaires think. So it's no different with real estate success. Like you have to adopt the habits and the rules of those who are super successful. I can promise you, if you just got your license, like I always tell new agents when they come in, I'm like, hey, like, hey, can you shut up and listen? And I don't mean that to be aggressive. I mean, in the sense, like, when I say shut up, can you shut off that part of your brain that thinks you have any better idea of how to succeed than I do? Because you don't know what's important. You don't know what matters. You only think that you do because there's no way you could because you only know through hours and reps and transactions and understand because it's not what you initially think. So if you're a new agent, you have to be willing to go find people that know what they're doing and then shut up and shut off that part of your brain that thinks you have a better solution because you don't. It's impossible. You can't. Now, let's say you follow their playbook and then you start to slowly improve on it. That's awesome because now you've done the reps and you bring in ideas. But to think out the gate that you have a recipe for success, it's impossible. That you don't, right?
Yeah.
The second piece is you have to adopt this mindset that like it's always raining outside, which sounds like really negative, but our mantra for our team has always been we're the unluckiest people in real estate. The unluckiest team in real estate, no one's coming to save you. Because it's true. This is a eat what you kill industry, and there is no, there's no buffer. So if you don't sell anything, people go, well, I make zero. No, you make less than zero because everyone has bills and bills are constant. So you actually, if you don't sell any homes, you're actually going negative.
Right.
So it's a race against that. So adopting the fact that like, but also too, like it's a tough industry, but when you realize it's tough on the front end and you approach it like it's tough, like you just have a better likelihood of succeeding because you understand exactly what it is.
Right.
I think that those two things combined, surrounding yourself with the right people, learning from the right people, understanding that you need to learn before you need to walk before you can run, you need to learn, and then understanding that it's tough and it's going to be tough, but it's the last frontier to get really insanely big paychecks. And I don't know, I'm a fan of those. So
Yeah, agreed. And the nice thing is once you figure that out, like you've got it figured out, and then it's kind of rinse and repeat going forward from there. You touch on mentorship, no matter what industry you're on. I know we always touch on it, is mentorship is so huge. And there's people out there like you, for instance, in the real estate world that are willing to give their expertise, willing to teach other people that, want to get started. And so like the opportunities are out there, but you just got to find those people to kind of to kind of grow with it and learn from. Like you said, it's all about being open-minded and not coming into it realizing that you know everything, because you don't. There's always
Well,
new things.
and don't waste my time, and don't waste your time, and don't waste, like, you, if you find someone that has something to give you, you need to find some way to bring something of value. But the fastest way you can lose someone's attention from a mentor standpoint is to not listen to what they say,
Right.
or to push back, or to not show up, right? If you go and ask someone for advice, they need to see you implementing their advice for you to earn that second meeting. So
Yeah.
I've traveled all over the country. I've paid hundreds of thousands of dollars into charities, like, to meet people, to say, hey, I want to be in your world. How can I be in your world? Please let me in your world. How much money can I donate to your favorite charity? Because you have to earn the right to be in those conversations. But when you get in that room, you'll find that most people, if you show up the right way, are very willing to share and very willing to mentor for, for not that much money. Like, people were very willing to offer time and attention if you put yourself out there and you show up the way that you need to, bringing value and bringing attention and actually listening.
Yeah. And it really is remarkable, like you said, how many of these people that people look up to that are such high level that are willing to give their time and their help to help other people. And to me, I think a lot of people undermine that aspect of it. And what's great about real estate and what you guys are doing at LPT Realty is that it's also a team concept. So again, you have an upline, you have people that are going to benefit when you also do better. And that to me is just such a great, philosophy how to grow a business, because it's a win-win for really everyone that's involved with that team going forward. So
Yeah.
kind of walk me through. I know, like you said, you've been to a couple of different brokerages. You've grown massive teams, and now the past couple of years, you've been with LPT Realty, which again is an up and coming brokerage. I know that you guys have hit 10,000 agents in under 2 years, which is the fastest ever, which is pretty amazing. And you've worked hand in hand with the founder of it, and in fact, you've also helped come up with the logo of LPT Realty. So, kind of walk me through what is so exciting for you about the LPT opportunity and kind of what kind of led you here.
Yeah. So 10,000 agents is an antiquated number. We don't report numbers anymore. But since we've announced 10,000 agents, we've doubled our state count. So saying that, I think you could probably do the math that we're probably substantially larger at this point, and we're excited to announce later at the end of the year, like, where we've landed.
Yeah.
But we stopped announcing agent count numbers because it's not our focus. Our focus is on real estate, right? We'd rather focus on training realtors and announcing their successes, as opposed to, oh man, we finally got to X amount of agents, because to the average agent who's just trying to sell another house, that doesn't really matter. But with all that being said, I was hire number one and agent number one at LPT. The founder and CEO, Robert Palmer, he hired me to take it from his brain, like, to the market. And I worked with the great leadership team Matt Hodge and Louis Furman and Matt Levy and Tracy Millman and a handful of other people to take this idea from a whiteboard to the market. And it's a company. We were Inman's most innovative brokerage of the year in 2024, and it's because the way we approach things. For years and years and years at LPT specifically, or in real estate specifically, brokerages have asked you to mold to them, right? There's this huge agent count, or like, I think it's like 1.6 million agents in the total market.
Mhm.
And most brokerages think they serve all 1.6, but they don't, because you have segments of realtors. And that's the segmentation has grown over the years, where you've got new agents and part-time agents who are doing it as a side hustle. You've got empire builders and people who want to grow a team and who care about stock and rev share and stuff like that. Then you've got your ultra luxury agents and anywhere in between. But if you joined the KW office, which I was with Keller Williams for a decade and had the privilege of working really closely with Gary and like everyone at KWRI, there's only one little avatar that it fits. And that's the person who can afford to do enough transactions to pay their $15,000 to $18,000 cap a year. Well, what if that's not good for you? Well, they say, well, what if I went to an office like that and I said, hey, I'm a part-time agent? More often than not, you could go, well, if you really want real estate success, you should be full-time. I could argue the merits in that too, but at the same time, what if that's not my journey? What if that's not my definition of success? So
Right.
we built LPT specifically to meet people where they are in their definition of success by introducing 3 different segmented models. We have the flat fee, 100% commission side of things, right? That's for your new agent, your part-time agent, or your agent on a team. We've got your traditional $15,000 cap at an 80-20 split. That's for your like empire builder, the guy who wants to run a team, or someone who's doing north of, I don't know, 10 transactions a year where it starts to financially make sense. And then we have our standalone luxury brand, which is non-capping, but full of value base that appeals to your people like your Compass or your Douglas Edelmans or anything along those lines. So we're actually the first brokerage to encompass the entire family of realtors in the country, or the family of agents, the 1.6 million. We have a plan for all of them. That was the concept we were built on. What if we finally built a brokerage that molded to you as opposed to making you mold to us? Because I'm never going to win with you. Well, if you come to me and you say, hey, I want to accomplish this, and I'm like, well, you should accomplish something different, we're always going to be in conflict. It might last for a year, it might last for 2 years, but you're never going to stick around with me because I'm trying to tell you what your definition of success should be. You only know that. So LPT was built on this foundation of agent choice, right? Not defining success, and then being really focused on real estate. A lot of these other companies that kind of came, your EXPs and your Reals, and they were the evolution of real estate after like your franchise model, your Remaxes and your Keller Williams, but they got things wrong. Like they were very focused on growth and this MLM vomiting of recruitment like across the board. And that only appeals to a small sliver of people who are actually going to build a substantial downline or rev share line or get really wealthy from real estate stocks. The average person in every one of these brokerages, they just want to sell one more house. So what if we had options for that if you wanted it, but you were part of a company that was real estate focused, just trying to give you the tools and tricks to sell one more house? Because honestly, that's what drives stock prices. It's what drives revenue, but somewhere that got lost in translation. So when we built LPT, it was on those foundations of making sure it's about your definition of success as an agent, and then being very focused on real estate above all things, because shockingly, that's what drives success in a real estate brokerage.
Yeah. And like you said, I love that it's very agent centric. And like you mentioned before, I think there's 1.6 million agents out there. And I'm curious what number of those agents are, like you said, part-time, not really out there building out a huge team. But what's great is that before you guys came along, all those agents were forced to go to like EXP, whatever it is. And if they join that kind of brokerage, I mean, it's not really set up for them. We were selling, under 6 houses a year. I mean, it might not make sense financially, but with LPT, like you mentioned, you can keep 100% of your commissions if you choose that certain package under the LPT umbrella, which to me is a huge advantage for all the part-time agents that are out there, which is awesome. And
and I don't know what the exact percentage is, but I know that it's grown. Like we've all seen the numbers from last year that say that like, 1 out of every 4 agents didn't sell any homes. So like it or not, no matter what that agent's ambition was, he or she was a part-time agent last year, right? Like, so a lot of people have been forced into that space. Another thing we don't talk about too are these ancillary fees where, a lot of brokerages like Keller Williams, like you can expect to pay anywhere between $150 to $300 a month on monthly bills. Let's say it takes you 6-7 months to get under contract. Like on your first home, even if you didn't pay anything out because of the cap, you've still paid in, a substantial amount of money. Like you're $4,000, $3,000, $4,000 in the hole before you have your first transaction, which is why at LPT we have no monthly fees. We don't have any monthly fees. There's no startup costs. Like if you came into our ecosystem and you didn't sell a house for the first 5 months, the amount of money that you would have paid LPT in that first 5 months is zero.
Yeah. And that's unheard of.
Which is it's a product of the market. Like the market needed that right now. So that's it's meeting people where they are instead of telling them where they should be.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Like you said, it's just a unique new opportunity that really hasn't been seen before in this industry. And for those listening, you guys obviously know that I have my own real estate investment company. I actually got my real estate license to help facilitate my own transactions, and I joined LPT as well because of all the amazing things that David is actually talking about. So I'm excited to see how that plays out. But another thing that I love is that LPT is, like you said, it's a young company. It's growing, but you guys got awesome founders up there at the top leading the charge. And I know that in behind the scenes, you guys have a vision of taking this company public eventually. So right now there's stock options, correct, for people that can come in, sell homes. So if you don't mind touching on that, how the stock options kind of work.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's part of that further evolution of where real estate's going. I think done are the days of franchise companies that don't offer your rev share and your stock options. Like you're seeing this, what we call it's been called a cloud-based brokerage, which isn't really an accurate statement because people have offices all over the country, right? Like we're still physical, like,
Yeah.
but it's a single entity brokerage that it crosses all state boundaries. Like we're out now in 50 states and three Canadian provinces. And we just announced at our meeting last week that we are opening up London with our luxury brand. So
Wow.
in 3 years, it's a pretty substantial amount of growth for one company. But specifically speaking, around like it's stocks important to people, right? Like for us, it had less to do with stocks because I think there's two ways to look at stock. The first way a lot of people look at it is, man, I can get rich with stock. The second way to look at it is ownership, right? It was really important for us when we were building this company to offer ownership to the agents, right? We don't have like Robert, our founder, has funded the entire company on his own. So up until this point, so we've never taken any money from any investors. So we've been very clear on who we serve in an agent-centric model, and it's the agent. But what's the best way to make sure that agent constantly has a say is to put them in an ownership position. So even when we IPO, it's really, yes, it'll be publicly traded, and yes, people can have access to those stocks. It was our vehicle of making sure that we gave ownership to the agents. They grow this company, they participate in this company. Like they should be able to have, they should be able to win when we win, right?
Yeah.
As a culture and a company. So it's less about getting rich. There's lots of opportunities to get rich, especially with the way that we're positioning and the way that we're heading into this IPO, but it's mostly about ownership. And that's a really important thing and a differentiator because I think a lot of times when you talk about rev share and when you talk about stocks, people get lost in it. They go, wow, this is a get rich thing. And some people just don't care, but it's more about ownership and opportunity and leveling the playing field between everybody else in the industry.
Yeah. And it's just a great added benefit as well for newer agents coming into the system.
Oh,
So
if
yeah.
you focus on those things, you can do really well in that space. And you'll never have a bigger opportunity with a company that's awarding stock units than when they head into an IPO. Like you're never going to get that kick on that multiple ever again. Like you're going to ebb and flow with the market, but that initial kick, like that's a big one,
Yeah.
especially when you weren't overvalued at any point by an investing firm because we've never taken any money.
Right.
So I hope that tracks, if that makes sense.
No doubt. Yeah, it's a massive benefit. And like you said, there's a multiple when you guys eventually do go public. And so when newer agents come in, you get stock when you sell properties, and then you go public and that stock is multiplied, you know. So it's just a great opportunity because you get keep money on all the transactions, depending what plan you click, and you also get stock. So it's unheard of. So on that note, I mean, what is really your role in this company? I know you mentioned you're kind of help leading the charge with LPT. I mean, are you still focusing on selling properties, building your team out, or are you more focused on the high level vision focused and just taking LPT to that next level as a company?
Yes, kind of all of the above. I was there in the beginning and helped build it. We talked about me designing the logo. I think it's a really awesome logo, so
I
that's
like
my
it. Yeah.
claim to fame. But building out the internal systems and all of that. Um, and now my role with the company is just kind of that as a raving fan. I work really closely with Robert and the executive team as kind of an advisor or just someone who goes out there and like is kind of steering. But my history in real estate from running, being a individual agent to running a large, very successful sales team here in Atlanta to having regional ownership through programs with Keller Williams and all that, like I represent a unique voice because I speak agent, I speak team leader, I speak owner, I speak all of those things. So my role in LPT today is just to make sure that the voices of everyone is heard, right? That we're representing the teams just as much as we're representing the individual agents, that we're representing the people who want to grow a giant network and a rev share downline as much as we're representing, the big people who are running teams. Like we want to make sure that all the voices are being heard, and I provide that unique perspective for everyone. But also too, just a fan and pushing really hard and working closely with the executive team to do whatever it takes to build to keep building this thing because it's a all hands on deck approach when you're heading into an IPO and you're growing. I mean, if you think 3 years, right? In 3 years, we're now in 50 states. It's the only
Yeah.
cloud-based brokerage to ever do that prior to going public. and have launched international. There's a lot of stuff to do and a lot of conversations to be had. So on the flip side, I focus on my real estate sales business here in Atlanta, and then also too on growing my network within LPT. Like it's been a really fast growing. I run this and operate this thing called the Catalyst Movement, and I can provide you the information so you can make sure all your listeners have it. But I interview top minds around the industry, kind of what you're doing here, but you're settling for me. I'm going for the ex CEO of Keller Williams, or Matt Miali, who's the most runs the most profitable team in all of Keller Williams, and I just you name it. I'm interviewing them
Yeah.
to bring value to my ecosystem and putting on like at least one good training a month from taught by one of those industry experts. So I'm focusing on that. I'm focusing on creating content that matters. And I think too often the real estate content that's created is very much like, hey, I'm David, look at me. And I don't know, man. I don't think people want to look at me that much. Right. So, but I do have a lot of unique connections and a lot of unique relationships. So what I try to do is I try to highlight them and get to like the bottom of what makes you successful, because maybe you can't go find Matt Miali because he's in Connecticut and build a relationship with him. But man, you can listen to him on the Catalyst Movement and really get a sense of like what drives him, because that's another form of mentorship. That's another form of understanding. So that's a big passion of mine right now too. So
Yeah.
helping out with LPT, driving sales here in Atlanta, and also too making sure I'm getting the right content out to the people in my ecosystem and abroad. I think we have a close to a 70,000 person email list at this point for the Catalyst Movement. So,
Wow.
making sure that they're all served the right way, because there's so much bad info out there and we want to get the best out there.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love the Catalyst movement that you're doing, and you and I both know that it's all about content and making great content that people can use and leverage up their own life. And you said I'm settling for you, but obviously you've done so many fantastic things, and Robert chose you for a reason to be the number one guy in the company, so must be doing something right on that note. Um, so yeah, I mean, for people listening that just heard LPT for the first time based off what you were talking about, they don't know anyone else in the company. They want to try to get more information or want to get started. I mean, what are some resources they can go to, or people they can reach out to kind of get more information and discuss next steps?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest way would be to reach out to you or to me to ask some questions and figure out like, hey, like, because this is LPT fits more people than the average brokerage. But there is people out there that LPT is not going to be the best fit for. So I would love for anyone who's curious to have an exploratory conversation to go, hey, based on my definition of success, how can you help me succeed? Right? We have a great video. And if you go to lpt.com, like there's a great video on there. It's a long video. It's about an hour and a half or hour and maybe it's not an hour and a half. Maybe it's like an hour and 7 minutes or something like that. But it's our founder, Robert, talking through everything. It's a long video, but it's a good understanding of who we are as a company. If you don't want to have a conversation with someone, I would say go to the website and check out that video, because it will really help you to understand like what the heart of this company is and like what we're doing to grow.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, have a conversation with someone. If you're willing to have a conversation, have an exploratory conversation, but do yourself a favor and make sure you stick to your guns and don't listen to someone like me go, hey, this is why LPT is perfect for you. Let's have an actual conversation and a dialogue about your business and understand what your goals are, where you want to go. And let's actually try to understand, is a company like LPT a good fit for that?
Yeah.
I believe 90% of the time it is, but it's not always. And it's important to approach it from that aspect with someone that trust, or someone that's been endorsed.
Right. And so, like you mentioned, important to kind of do your research and figure out what your goals are and how this can best align to what your goals are. With
Yeah.
that said, though, we'll put some links in the description of this episode, as well as some contact information, so you guys can check out the video he was just talking about. So I'll get some more information on some next steps. So before we run out of time, just got a couple more questions I want to ask you, and one of them is, obviously you've done so much in real estate, but what I love about your whole business ecosystem is that you're more than just real estate. You've expanded to boxing gyms, and you found a way to become an investor that's earning passive income on other investments outside of real estate. And we always preach on the podcast that you need to find some way to earn the income and then find a way to invest that income and go out there and start businesses like what you're doing and boxing gyms, or whatever that passion is. So kind of talk to me about that transition. Why did you want to get into boxing gyms, and how did you kind of figure out these other investments that you wanted to, invest your money from real estate into these other companies?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I don't want this to come across as like an LPT pitch fest.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome. I had a lot to do with building it, and a lot of people agree with me when you figure out what that final agent count number is. But almost dead even with my passion for LPT, which obviously I have a lot of, is my passion for investing and my passion for building wealth as real estate is your primary vehicle. I said in the beginning, like that was this the last frontier to get those big checks. But you get one big check. What matters more than your ability to get one big check is what you do with that big check once you get it.
Right.
And as I was building this business, I started to look where my money was going. So it started out where I was like, man, okay, great. I have a potential investment. Let me call my pool of investors and who wants to flip it or who wants to buy and hold it. And eventually I was like, huh, because I would, then I would help them sell it and I would see how much they were making. And I was like, that's probably some money I should keep. Right. So shifting my mindset going like my first question on a listing appointment is should I buy it? Right. Which is something I pulled from like the great Ben Kinney is that your first question is should I buy it? Right. What can I do with it? So I started looking where my money was going out and where I was helping create opportunities for other people. And I was like, what's the best way to capitalize it? So slowly but surely, right? Like my real estate business funded a renovations company for flipping homes. Then it funded a big portfolio that where we've held sometimes over 30 single family homes, right? That I was owning and managing. Then it moved into a title company as volume went up and we were closing a lot of property. So
Yeah.
then it moved into a coaching program for the stuff that we're doing. And now it's evolved into the Catalyst movement. And then so almost 90% of the things I was doing were in the real estate space because it was just a natural progression of what I was doing once volume increased. And once I got to understand where the money moves in a real estate transaction in these real estate investments.
Yeah.
Then, I started, I've always had outside of real estate, I've always had a passion for like unique disciplines. And, it started off with like a competitive CrossFit for like 8 years and then a journey into Olympic weightlifting and understanding, okay, great. Like what are the intricacies of this and the discipline? And then I started to get involved in traditional boxing and, boxing at its core sounds a little bit like violent and barbaric, but it's actually not. Like it's the discipline of footwork, the discipline of understanding it, like is this really amazing evolution. And I developed a passion for it. And, I realized really quickly I was training with this company here in Atlanta and this trainer, and he had two aspects to his business. One was the traditional boxing, and the second piece was, boxing based group fitness. So I started watching and I started watching the way that the money flowed and that traditional boxing is awesome for a passion, but it's not a big money maker. But group fitness boxing was. So taking the business acumen that I had developed on the real estate side of things, I started analyzing other businesses. In this case, it was a group fitness boxing studio. And I realized there was a lot of money in that. So I partnered with this guy. Turns out, for multiple reasons, I needed to get out of that relationship. And I did, but then we went on to fund, several, through a franchise company, several group fitness studios around the Atlanta area. And
That's
I
awesome.
realized really quickly that when you develop business acumen and you're doing this pursuit of understanding like how to lead and how to operate businesses, even in the real estate space, it does translate into other things. You just have to be willing to look for it. So taking that same opportunistic approach that we do in the pursuit of listings and we do in the pursuit of investment opportunities, taking that same opportunistic vision to look for opportunities outside.
Yeah.
And that was how, my relationship with Rumble Boxing was born.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so well said. And what I love about that is real estate was your main focus. That's basically the tree trunk of what's sprouting out here. And you got so great at real estate, and now you can start to niche out into the other sections of real estate where now you can kind of control more of the process, become the owner from step A to Z instead of just being the owner in step A. So I love that whole starting out. And like you're talking about, I mean, it's important to be really good at what you're doing first. You can make enough income that you can go out there and invest instead of spreading out too thin too soon. So it's important to be really good at that first thing. And I love what you're doing with the gyms. I think gyms are fantastic and it's an awesome investment. I think it'd be so cool to have one eventually. And then yeah, it just sounds like a great idea. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Before we hop off, is there anything else that you would like to say? And if people want to reach out to you, how can they go about and find you?
I appreciate you having me on here, man. I could talk about this stuff for hours. So,
Yeah.
um, a couple of points I made is that what you do with the big check is just as, if not more important than your ability to get the big check.
Mhm.
So get the big check first and then think really hard about what you do with it, right? Make sure you pay taxes, make sure you're putting a segment over to invest, and then always be opportunistic, like in all things. Like that's the including the pursuit of people to teach you, the pursuit of mentors, the pursuit of people to learn from, like those things. If I were going to summarize like my journey, like that's it. Secondly, the industry is evolving really quickly. The real estate world is changing. The market is shifting dramatically with the increased interest rates, like paired with like really low inventory, which creates a weird dynamic where it's weird out there right now. But there's still a lot of opportunity there. I think more so than ever, you need to be hyper focused on who you surround yourself with, and especially your brokerage affiliation. You really need to be looking at the people that you're aligned with, and like, is this like we see it all the time where agents approach today's market with yesterday's market's tactics. And in my world, it looks like I have a listing and we've got multiple offers, but then some agent sends a offer that's 30,000 below asking, making all these requests. And you go, man, like that's a bummer because I bet his or her clients don't know that she's awful or that he or she is awful. They probably don't know that. They were probably really excited about this house and their agent didn't educate them.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is don't be that agent. Like if you are in real estate or even if you're investing, make sure you're surrounding yourself with an organization or with people or mentors that are equipping you with the tools to address today's market and tomorrow's market, not the ones of the previous market. Because
Mhm.
you're going to get left behind because as AI and as technology increases, like the gap is getting really big between the great and elite agents and investors and the ones who just aren't. And that's why you saw so many people not sell a house last year, while some of us thrived.
Right. Get able to adapt, learn new things, and like you said, that'll help you scale what you're doing and grow. Um, well, that's amazing advice, and I appreciate it again. And the guys, with that said, David Lewis, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you. You guys can all find me at TLG Companies on Instagram, and I'll make sure you guys get links to the Catalyst movement and all of that good stuff. And I'm always around to talk shop. We cut it short today, but I could go for a long time. So anybody and everybody reach out. I'm happy to contribute any way that I can.
I love that. The guys definitely take him up on that, and hopefully we'll have a part two here coming up soon to continue this.